Hello everyone, this is Mario. I'm here to show you a tutorial on Terran against Protoss, some kind of mech play, a way to help scout out the Protoss, and a way to better understand the matchup. I know that a lot of players are having trouble Terran against Protoss, especially with mechanical units. I know it's not the most optimal way to play the matchup, however, I personally feel like it's the most enjoyable way to play the matchup, kind of like a Brood War-esque style. If you've played a lot of Brood War, you'll understand my passion, since everything is like Siege Tank, Vulture, and Goliath. You know, there's a lot of mechanical units, and it focuses heavily on positioning, and or multi-pronged attacks. I mean, Bio does as well, but they're a little bit different. So I want to show you one of my games, and my thoughts on this game. This is a game that I played on stream, and it is Terran against Protoss, and there's a Protoss in the top right corner of the map is Daybreak, and his name is Mercy. One of the things you'll notice in Heart of the Swarm is the counter, 6 out of 24, 7 out of 24 right now. One of the things that I want to relate to that, or explain about this timer, or this counter, and how many SCVs you have, is that the average amount that I focus on is try to keep 16 to 18 at each base. If I can help it, I try not to go over that. 16 is actually the optimal, but you can keep mining extra minerals, and your SCVs won't go to waste. If you have 24, it is better to split them out as evenly as possible over the course of 3 bases. You will see me walling off, and I usually send my 9th SCV that just finished over to the ramp with the rally point, and then I'll make another 10th worker. This is very common for me. One of the reasons why I wall off at the ramp with my first supply depot is so that I can see probes exit or enter the base. Or, it helps me prepare my wall off for a later stage in the game. The SCV who usually makes a supply depot, when he's finished at about 12 supply, will make a barracks closer to my base. I have no intention of walling off at the start, unless I feel like the enemy player might be choosing. This is a preference. I only do this because probe harass can be annoying, and I don't want them to be able to harass my workers much, and it's much more difficult when it's closer to my base where the other SCVs can assist me. At 13 supply, I get a refinery. A lot of my play focuses on harass, positioning, and the 1-1-1. There aren't many safe ways to open up Terran against Protoss mech style. I do feel like the 1-on-1 is either the greatest way to open a mech, or the more efficient way. Some other great ways are, basically you don't want to die, and you need plenty of Marines, and most likely you're going to need bunkers and siege tanks, so you could do like a barrack factory opener. But my favorite is the 1-on-1, and that's what we'll be showing here. Once you have received 150 gas, you want to lay down your factory. 100 gas, you want to lay down your factory. Your first Marine will come out. You want about 2 Marines total until you make any type of add-on or anything. So if we have 100 gas, we're going to drop down the factory. Normally you want to put your mules on the farther away mineral patch, but I put this one closer for some reason. I continue my supply depots at the front, just in case I do need to wall off if I scout something with my worker who's currently in the enemy base. When we're in the enemy base, we're scouting for a few things, but their biggest concern is how many gas we have. We also want to start a reactor after the second Marine has finished and we have 50 gas. A lot of this play can be based off of just one gas. If we want to play really aggressive, we could drop down to after the factory is started and do like a different variation of units. Another thing to remember is that it does take 3 Marines to kill a mothership core, and the mothership core will enter your base about 5 minutes and 30 seconds. As you can see, it's building in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. After the factory and the barracks are done, we want to throw down a command center. The reason for this being is that even though it is a 1-on-1, and we do want to open safe, we don't want to fall too far behind in the expansion. We're going to go ahead and send our scout back up, and I don't see an expansion on the map, and I see a stalker at the ramp, which means that I know that the stalker normally heads for your base at 5 minutes, which is why I set this SCV back. If the stalker is still at the ramp, that gives you time to where you do not have to drop a bunker to thwart off the stalker, the Zella, or the mothership core, because not all of them will be able to reach your base, and you'll be safe, and you don't have to invest in minerals. Then we want to start producing Hellions. Hellions are kind of the backbone of the mech army. They're like the vulture of Grid War. We also want to be able to get a starport going, because if we decide we can't enter through the front, we might have to enter through the back. We might need a Viking to stop oracles or void rays. We might need a medevac to heal Hellbats, the transformed version of the Hellion. Or, in general, we might need a Raven to stop detectives. You want to kind of keep an eye on where the Protoss has been. A lot of my play revolves around knowing where the enemy is, and being aggressive, but also responding to his positioning. I did see his probe and try to enter my ramp, so I was aware that there might be a supply depot, or a pylon somewhere. You want your barracks to keep making add-ons, add-ons that you'll need, but only in a timely fashion. We've made the reactor so that I could probably throw down another factory on top of it and produce more Hellions. We've also started the armory, because we want to be able to get Hellbats. I've scanned the enemy base, and I normally do this about 7-minute mark or the 5-minute mark, depending on if I clear all it. Since he hasn't expanded, and I figured he would have by now, I decided to throw a skill at the 7-minute mark. We now have about 8 Hellions on the field. We got our second gas. We see that he is on 2 gas and in this space, so I drop an engineering bay. Although I am well aware that he's got a robotics facility, he can now at this stage be working on Templar as well, or an Oracle, the Stargate tech. I see the observer kind of moving above the base, so I recognize that he is aware, or at least semi-aware of what I'm doing. You always have to keep an eye on your Hellions, and you should try to focus on sniping things without losing something. The biggest thing that you want is retention. You want to retain your army. I notice he's moving out, and I've decided this is the perfect time, since I haven't moved down my ramp or gotten the expansion yet. I can use the ramp as a defensive point when I go attack him. I purposely fly past the watchtower to try to lure him to actually come back to the base and defend it. So I actually drop them outside of the base so that I can turn the Hellions into Hellbats and drop a bunker inside of my base. I decide this is going to be a bit of a fight. He's now on my ramp, and I'm unable to retreat because of the force field. I am, however, producing Banshees because Immortals are not very well used. They can't shoot out. So I'm producing Banshees, Marines, and Hellions. I'm also making another factory so I can produce more Hellbats. I don't want to engage him because it's not a guarantee that I'll win the fight. The longer I stall, the more units I have at my base to help me reinforce. He isn't able to reinforce as much because I took out a lot of his workers. 20 to be exact. There's now 25 of my workers to 10 of his. I'm making more supply depots in the back, and I'm dropping the supply depots as well on the already made supply depots in the back. It gives me extra time supply. Waiting for my drop to come back so that I can optimally engage this without as many losses. I send in my SCVs and I realize he's luring me down the ramp, so I retreat, so the force field doesn't cut off my workers.
This better be good.
And I repair the factory. I'm waiting to reposition my arm again, and I watch the sentry and I realize that he doesn't have as much energy. He can no longer force field the map. Trying to bait him into a key spot. I lift off 4 Hellbats and drop him in the back so he can no longer run away. Once he can no longer run away, I go ahead and send him the SCVs. Since he can't exit the ramp, it'll be much more difficult to micro against my SCVs, while my Hellbats and Marines deal damage. Picking up the weak Hellbats and moving them to the back. Now that his units have died, only the mothership core remains, and it is 18 workers to 12. The only difference here is that I have an expansion and I can produce more workers than he can at the same time. I can also call down mules and get an advantage that way. Since I am also making Marines and Hellbats, it's more efficient for me to produce this type of army. It's very powerful against what the enemy can do, and it's very cheap for me. Since I have mules and I can produce twice as many SCVs as he can probes, I feel very safe doing this. And I'm also now looking for the observer, just spotting it in the scan. Making a Thor, I realized that most of his army has revolved around stalkers. A Thor is immensely good against stalkers and decided that while it's making it, go ahead and drop him and bait him into attacking me. While I may continue to make Hellbats and Marines. Dropping in his base, he now decides that he wants to push up my ramp. I hold position my army and try to wait for him to come up the ramp before I surround it. My Thor is still attacking. As you can tell, at the same time I was not only dropping in his base, but he was reduced down to 3 workers with no expansion. This is a prime example of how you can manipulate the Protoss in a mech type scenario. As your units in mech are really strong in small numbers with specific types of compositions. As an example, medevacs compared with Hellbats are great at annihilating worker saturations, simply because the workers either would have to attack or run away, and the average unit that they use to warp into deter drops are zealots. With the Hellbat, you can with the medevac, you can not only speedily retreat, however, you can retain those units for longer as you can try to snipe more workers. Thors and Hellbats are also a great combination against Stalker Zealots, so in small amount of numbers, Thors and Hellbats should generally come out on top, as long as your units are targeting the right type of units. You also have a ramp advantage, as long as you don't push out until you feel safe, or you know what the enemy is doing. This has been my tutorial on Terran against Protoss. This is a heavily harassed type play, and if you enjoy this, please leave a comment below, or follow me at www.twitchtv.com/HTOMario and watch my stream and support me. Thank you for watching. I do expect I'll be releasing more of these.